Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark, and joining me this week, we got John. Jared, welcome back. And
thank you.
Nessie and a whole gaggle of people I love. Hello, how are you?
Hi.
They went and got together without me. Of course, Dan's there. You crossed the pond to be making an event out of it. I would love to be there.
How we not?
Yeah, I've already got to take two vacation trips this year, and I'm thinking about a third in October. But couldn't make this one. But I'm really glad you guys are all there, and I'm glad you guys are here for this. Jared, I didn't mean to gloss over you like that, but you know this is happening.
No, this is a special occasion. I'm old hat at this point. I've been on a couple of these things already.
Well, literally everyone here has been on for something in the past, but that's how we do here. This is what we do. But yeah, Jared, thanks for coming back. So this is for Obi-Wan. The Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which we just watched.
Yeah. By the way, for people watching, I'm almost there. I'm just a couple hours away. I'm right now in Maryland, spending some time with my family, and soon I'll be spending time with this family.
Aww.
Yeah. But I still have my orange juice.
Right. You wouldn't. That's how we know you're still John.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk some Obi-Wan. Who here? Nessie, and John and Jared. I know you've all seen it. What about the rest of yous over there? Have you watched it? No.
I'm bowing out before spoilies.
I've seen minor spoilers on Twitter, but that's it.
Okay, so let's just do a top-down view. Okay, let's avoid spoilers for at least a minute for these lovely folks and anybody who's joining us here right at the beginning. Spoiler-free. We'll start with our guest, Jared. What did you think of the show?
I absolutely loved it. Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of my favorite Star Wars characters, probably top 3, along with Rey and Anakin. And this was a project that had been rumored for a long time, back when it was a movie. I was just excited for it then. I was excited when I heard it was going to be a show. And I was even more thrilled when I learned that all of the returning players would be participating in the show. And so I had high expectations, which I try to avoid because expectations can be killer for something like this. And yet, despite that, this show managed to exceed them. I thought it was amazing. I ended up thinking it was an essential part of this story I love, the Skywalker saga. You know, episodes 1 through 9 had been in place already. To me, this is truly episode 3.5. And going forward on future watches of the story, I will be treating it as such.
Okay, well, that's pretty effusive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Nessie, how about you? What do you think? What did you think of the show?
You know, I loved it. I got everything that I wanted. Like Santa Star Wars just filled my stocking, and especially the final scene. That's all I have to say.
He left a special treat for you.
He sure did. I was a very good girl this year.
I know what that
is. What can I say? I'm an open book when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Open book, open heart.
But I really did. I loved it. There were some maybe some not so my favorite parts, but 9 out of 10 at least. Great acting. The cast was so good in this. I just can't say enough. And it moved the story along, and it just touched so many notes, especially about survivor's guilt and the cost of war and PTSD. I just loved it. It did. It hit all the feels.
Okay. Also pretty effusive. John, are we going to keep this train rolling?
Well, for now we are. No, this was great because I've been thinking about what this would look like for years now, because there's been rumors of this for the longest time, back when I thought it would just be Obi-Wan, in the desert pretty much. And this was so
Lawrence
much,
of Arabia style.
and this was so much more. And what I love is the fact that, I mean, the prequel era definitely feels like it's my era. It was the new Star Wars for me growing up. That said, I did always have certain gripes about, I love George Lucas, but an actor's director he is not. And there were issues with his dialogue and stuff like that. And what I was really looking forward to with this was getting a fresh perspective and new people behind the scenes taking a stab at these characters, and getting Ewan McGregor especially, and now Hayden Christensen as well, a chance to to deliver performances and get to dive into material that was a bit more polished, shall we say, and not constantly in front of a green screen, which is a big thing. And they both blew me away, and the story blew me away. There were a couple rocky parts, I think. I think my main issue was kind of episode 3 has a couple
let's not get into spoilers yet.
I won't, but there's a couple little holes that I feel like maybe they cut a scene or two, and I'd like to there are questions I'd like to ask, like the director and and maybe some of the writers. But aside from that, that's a very minor nitpick for me. The rest of it was just so beautiful. And no spoilers, but that last episode just like chills down my spine. It was beautiful. So yeah, effusive from me.
Okay.
Now, Steven.
3 for 3 so far. Unfortunately, that is where it ends, because for me, my overall like top-down view is I liked it. It was fine. Which, that's not a bad thing. But there were parts of it that I really enjoyed. There were other parts of it where I'm like, I almost don't care, which is not really what I want from my Star Wars, obviously. I went into it actually very positive about it, but I don't know. Again, I liked it. It was fine. One character I connected with very deeply. I think we'll save that for spoiler talk. There was one specific character that I just absolutely loved, and would take a 10-season show about that character. Yeah. But yeah, so like I enjoyed it, but it was not. It was not the transcendental Star Wars experience that I've had with other properties, with other stories in Star Wars. Think back to last year when Luke freaking Skywalker showed up at the end of The Mandalorian. I cried. Okay. I literally cried. I was nowhere close to crying with this, but it was good. But it didn't excite me per se. All right. That's it.
I don't know why.
So that is what it is. I always call, we have our honest reactions here. And hey, maybe I'll change my mind. You guys have changed my mind about stuff in the past. Sometimes it's about perspective, For me, Star Wars is Luke Skywalker. The further removed from that you are, I don't know. it's all of it, but like
it's a lot bigger than Luke Skywalker.
It is. I guess what I'm saying is I didn't need this story. I enjoyed the story they gave me. I didn't need it. I'm really happy for you Star Wars fans who did want it and need it, and that you got something that you truly loved. But this story wasn't aimed at me just because of the way I think about that world, I guess. Anyway, I'm not going to shit on it or anything, but I did not have the experience with it the rest of you did. All right, so shall we start in with spoilery stuff? This is your last chance to not hear some spoiler talk. I'm going to start with something soft. But because
I think we've already spoiled one thing, which was I think it rhymes with fly, bomb, Kim.
No, you're choppy.
You guys are choppy.
Yeah, we couldn't hear that, unfortunately.
Very funny as well.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, we knew that this might be a problem. She's on vacation Wi-Fi.
Let's try it without the arrow and see if that helps me.
Well, you sound better already anyway.
Wow.
All right.
Well, we say that. Anyway, let's start with spoilery talk, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yep.
Okay, so the best part of this TV show is Leia Organa. Hands down, for me at least. As much as Luke Skywalker is my guy, that's me, that's my self-insert. That means Leia's my sister, and I love her, and she's amazing. And this little girl that played her, just, carried that charisma, had that inner fire that Carrie Fisher brought to the character, and I just loved it. And I'm not a big person for recasting legacy characters, but I'm okay with this. And I couldn't tell you what the difference is, honestly, but God, I loved her. I want to be her dad. So what did you think? Leia, good, bad, indifferent?
No, she was fantastic. Sorry, where's that
I think
noise
it's
coming
Jared. I think it's Jared.
What are you hearing?
There's a sound.
Oh, okay. Here, let me see if I can take care of that.
Yeah.
So,
I'd muted myself and it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was the Wi-Fi.
Did you move positions, Nessie?
No.
No, there's just.
No, she
I can
just
see the door now because there's not people back there.
No, I absolutely loved Leia. It was great for to see Obi-Wan playing off of her, and now I'm left wondering why on earth were all the chips put on Luke as the future when I would have turned my attention over to Leia.
She's right there.
well, I think they both have strengths. They are very. We'll get into it later, but I mean, Leia. Let's just say she got a little bit more polish on her because of her upbringing and maybe her natural instincts. But Luke, I think, is more of just the classic open-hearted fantasy hero who, his empathy is really one of his greatest strengths as well. And he is the one who ultimately makes the connection with Vader. With Anakin Skywalker, so I think there is another Leia may be the more the bookish smart, but Luke has his merits too.
Yeah, I'm just saying based on what we see in this show, Leia got so much of the spotlight and got so many wonderful moments that it's like, hey, she's the star.
I mean, we see all the seeds of what Leia is going to become here. All the seeds are planted. This woman is going to single-handedly, she's going to carry the rebellion. You know, she's going to spread the rebellion, and she's going to give hope to people who don't have hope. Yeah, she's just as important as Luke, you know, on the macro scale, without Leia having laid all the, you know, having done all the legwork and put in all the time and the structure. You know, the rebellion wouldn't have happened. There wouldn't have been a galaxy to save. You know, that she kept hope alive. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, since Trish is mentioning the actress, let's just say her name, Vivian Lyra Blair. Fantastic. She was our princess. She was a pure spark of pure light. She was smart. She had a great heart, but
Charisma.
she also, and charisma, but also, you know, she had an arc in this story as well. You know, I kind of feel like, you know, in the very first episode, she has a little bit of that like rebellious spark, but it's not like she's not like directing it anywhere. She's like running off, and because it doesn't want to be at the formal functions, and her mother and she's like, I don't like want to be doing this, and her mother basically like, well then do more with it. And I think over the course of the series, that's her arc, is that she learns to take her natural gifts and start to apply them towards the person that we know she's going to become, you know, in service of others, in service of the rebellion, in service of the galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I was so impressed by her that depending on how they play out stories in years to come, I would love to see her continue to play
Young Leia.
And,
give it to me.
Well, I said, give me 10 seasons of that show.
Yeah, as she grows, she can play, you know,
Mhm.
Leia in various stages. I think it would be great, because I was completely sold on her as not just, you know, a young actor playing a young version of Leia, but someone who I think would be phenomenal in the role moving forward. So
let's see her on her diplomatic missions, or going to junior senator school. putting on her
I'll watch it. Give it to me.
That's some good stuff.
Okay, so it's not called Princess Leia, the show. It's called Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Indeed.
And I was just absolutely blown away by Ewan McGregor's performance. Not that I was surprised, because, you know, even with all the sort of, you know, difficulties in the prequel films, you know, between, you know, I think, and this isn't me ragging on the prequels, I still love them, but yeah, I think many of the actors struggled with their performances, and with the green screen, it was very hard, you know, especially back then when that was a new thing. But he was always fantastic. Like Ewan McGregor was always, you know, knocking it out of the park. So now to see him in this, where he has, you know, more, like he's in the volume, you know, with actual backgrounds and, you know, and more real sets and stuff like that, I knew that he'd be able to, you know, just step it up even more. And when I just think about, you know, he had so many great moments, but I keep going back to that final.
Somebody do something about that person in the chat, please.
Oh, there's like some spam bot in there.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
But that final confrontation between Vader and Obi-Wan, just Ewan McGregor's face during that scene and the emotions that he's going through, and you know, he says, "I'm sorry, Anakin. I'm sorry for all of it." It's just, you know, it tore me up. He's so good, which is, you know, just to move off of Ewan for a second. Like, I have nothing but superlatives to say for Hayden Christensen for this show. He didn't get it nearly as much as Ewan McGregor got, obviously, but holy crap, he just absolutely delivered. And you know, that final scene where you know, you see half of his face and he's
Yes.
you know, his acting there, and it goes between Hayden's voice and and Vader's. You know, it's just the acting was just so out of this world amazing for this show. It was so great to see these actors get this opportunity, because they just blew me away.
Yeah. I'm really happy for everyone involved. I'm really happy for everyone who truly loved it. I really am. I thought he did a good job. You don't want to hear my opinion. You want to hear her opinion and his opinion, though. I thought he did great. Nessie, what do you think of the lovely Ewan McGregor in this show?
Wow. He really got to spread his wings with this character that he's been playing and that he played for years. But I think he in this show got to take Obi-Wan and make him his own. You can tell that he has great love for this character and that he's thought a lot about this character and what the impact of killing his friend did to him, and the guilt and the pain and the heartache that he suffered for years. And he carried that. You could see it on his face. You could hear it in his voice and his actions. So, I mean, he really has embodied this character, and not the hello there, smart General Kenobi who has, you know, everything to a T, obey the rules. He did everything correctly as per orders, and it turned out so stinking wrong for him. Like this is not how it was supposed to happen. He did everything right. He did everything by the rules, and this is not how things were supposed to happen.
I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt.
And coming to grips with that.
Maybe that is where I'm finding some difficulty that I had with the show early on, is that the Obi-Wan they show us at the beginning of episode 1, I'm like, that's not my Obi-Wan. I don't recognize that.
I think that's
the point, but like
that's the point.
Yeah, okay, I get that that's the point, but like I'm just like, nope, that's not him.
Of it, he's overcome that.
Think of everything he's been through.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but like 10 years later, he's still sulking.
It's not sulking. It's guilt.
Guilt.
It's guilt.
No, I think the reason that I responded so strongly to this version of Obi-Wan was because in a lot of ways you said like Luke Skywalker was your character, Stephen. In a lot of ways I feel like Obi-Wan was mine, Anakin as well. But he was, first we're introduced to him as a very confident young Padawan, and we saw him become a knight, become a master, become a general, become a war hero over the course of the prequels and the Clone Wars. And he was a larger than life figure. He, along with Anakin, they were legends. They were heroes. And then Anakin fell and became a twisted, unrecognizable monster in a lot of ways. And then Obi-Wan, who loved him like a brother, had to, as we learned at the beginning of this series, he set out to stop him, and he thought he killed him. He thought he cut off all of his legs and left him to burn to death on a shore, and then orphaned these two young kids. And he walked away. So when he starts out in the series, you can see that he is not over that trauma. And I think what I really responded to is Obi-Wan is the quintessential Jedi, which doesn't mean he's flawless. It means that he embodied the principles of the order to the greatest extent possible. And then that order fell. And so now Obi-Wan is broken and lost, and as we can just see, his self-confidence is completely shattered.
Yes.
And seeing that is extraordinarily relatable, because who among us has not felt that way?
I mean,
For Obi-Wan, it's like,
have.
But I just so it hurt me personally to see when Bail comes to him and asks him earnestly to go and save his daughter Leia, and Obi-Wan, in a very classically mythological way, refuses the call. But it's not like the way Luke refused it in The New Hope, where it's just like, I can't get involved, it's too big, I got too much work to do. Obi-Wan's like, I cannot do it, I will fail, find someone else. And he only comes to it when Bail comes to him in person and pleads with him, and throughout the entire show, we see him struggling to get back to that person that we know he can be, and he does so by helping others as a true Jedi. Yeah. And so that's part of what I found the series so powerful, and specifically the idea of how it culminates in his final duel with Vader, being able to forgive himself.
Yes.
And recognizing that while he may have failed, Anakin also made his choice, and he can choose to be better. He can choose life. He can choose the future, and he can choose to walk away, as he ultimately does. But he's not walking away to go into hiding this time. He's not hiding behind his mission. He has a new mission and a new purpose and new hope.
Yeah, and
I see what you did there at the end.
I know. I was planning this.
I will say one of the moments that's really gripped me in the very first episode, because it was a sign of like how far from the Obi-Wan we knew he's fallen, is that moment where we see him working and the other worker gets pushed down, and there's that moment of where we remember General Kenobi, who probably would have done something in that moment, and to see that he doesn't, and that he has to keep a low profile, and that he can't do anything in that moment. It was heartbreaking to watch that. And
how many times he had to do that?
Yeah.
The Empire with the boot heel on just everyday citizens, and just at that room, and just the way that it just grinds people down. And,
Nope. Yeah. Sorry, Nessie. You're just chopping to pieces.
God,
sorry.
You always have such insightful things to say. You're okay. Camera caught up. Try again. Oh crap.
Oh
no. All right, just us boys now. We can sit around in our underwear and fart and scratch ourselves. All right.
So yeah, Aaron made a comment about how it's a similar thing with Luke and The Last Jedi, that just because it's so far from, because that was so far from Luke being who he was, and Return of the Jedi, for example, that it's hard to take. But I like to see these characters struggle with their doubts, and and their moments of losing hope, and finding their way back. I think it makes them all the more intriguing. And the thing is, Obi-Wan didn't just go through something traumatic and then things went back to normal. The universe fell to a fascist empire. His family and his order collapsed, were all murdered, and he's
fine. I guess I can forgive him for being in a bad mood for 10 years. No, I mean, you're right. You really are right.
When you find yourself in, this is the pits of this is the darkest place that Obi-Wan is will ever be. This is the bottom for him.
He's been down there for a long time.
He's been there for a long time. He's had no reason to get back up.
Yeah, no, I mean, and part of it is also that, like, while he has this mission, it's not like he's actually being able to act on it. Like, Owen's not letting him near Luke. He hadn't even met him until the very end of this series, other than actually handing him to Owen and Beru as a baby. But he can't. I've always personally felt like, the Jedi powers, the Force, their connection to the Force, particularly on the light side, is amplified and grows when a Jedi is acting in service of others, and I think we see that throughout the show. But at the beginning of the show, Obi-Wan is not acting like a Jedi, so it's not a surprise to me that he is, as Vader calls him, weak in the Force, because he's not in touch with it. He's out of balance. Yeah. So, and it makes total sense why in their first fight Vader absolutely kicks his ass, because Vader is secure in the dark side of the Force at this point, and Obi-Wan is not balanced in the light.
Yeah, Obi-Wan's dealing with the fact that he's disconnected from the Force. He's also in the midst of severe emotional trauma in that moment, because his best friend, who he thought he killed, is actually still alive, and he's, walking around as this, giant, terrifying hunk of metal, basically. And, Obi-Wan sees him, murdering people left and right. And, so he's got like disconnection from the Force, shock and guilt, doubt, a loss of hope. And so he's not prepared for that fight in any way, shape, or form. He's just does it as a way to, provide a distraction. And but it was so great throughout the next couple episodes to watch him gradually, reconnect with the Force and become more, the Kenobi we recognize from fighting the Clone Wars and and all that stuff, until, man, that final fight. And I'm just never going to get over, him bringing back the I will do what I must, and then the classic Obi-Wan lightsaber pose with that music.
Yeah.
It was,
yeah.
So
he was so smart. He was so smart in his fighting. He used, because he knew Anakin or Darth had been, was more powerful, had been, using and training, and had just grown in the Sith. But he was smart. He knew all of his moves already. He knew what he was going to do. And he's like, if you can't breathe, you can't fight. This is a very simple concept.
Yeah.
Smart. And he's just.
Yeah, might not be the best idea to keep the thing that keeps you alive on the outside of your rib cage in the front center of your chest. But I don't imagine Vader designed the suit, so I'll give him a pass on that one.
That was old Sheevy Palps.
Yeah.
But Jess brings up an interesting point in the chat that he might be in denial as far as being aware of Vader through the Force. I think that's part of it, because, we mentioned that, Obi-Wan spent 10 years believing that he killed Anakin, which is not something I had always thought. I had thought he might be aware that Vader was still out there somewhere. But no, he spent 10 years on Tatooine, clearly not watching the news, that he killed his best friend and brother. And then he learns the truth from Reva at the end of the second episode, in that incredible moment where he reaches out, says Anakin's name, and then we get the smash cut to Vader waking up in his Bacta tank on Mustafar. But then in the subsequent episode, in episode 3, there's that haunting moment where Obi-Wan's walking across the desert with Leia, and he sees Anakin as he knew him, kind of looking at him from a distance as kind of a devil in the desert kind of figure, which is interesting because Ewan McGregor once played Jesus. But it was a fun, it was interesting because he has no idea of knowing what Vader looks like. He knows what he did to Anakin, but he can't comprehend it in that moment. So that when we get that horrifying sequence where he sees Vader for the first time, and Vader is marching down the street, torturing and killing innocent people to draw Obi-Wan out. You when you look at Obi-Wan's face, he is terrified in that moment. He is shocked and terrified and horrified, and he is completely unbalanced. He acts like selflessly to try and lead them away from Leia, but when Vader confronts him and like Obi-Wan draws his blade for the first time, he does not draw it as a Jedi in defense. He draws it out of fear. It's like, oh my gosh, Vader might be around the corner about to cut my head off. And then he runs. That's another thing that was hard to see, but it makes sense. He is not ready to face Vader, and as Vader said, what you made me.
Yep.
I am what you made me. But as ultimately as we come to see, as he starts to like engage with the idea more and more, he comes to realize what Nessie was alluding to, which is that Vader is still Anakin. Even if he is twisted and broken as much as he is.
Twisted and evil.
He is twisted and evil, more machine now than man, but he is still fundamentally Anakin, and that both gives him the knowledge he needs to best him, but also reignites a spark of hope until Vader quite brutally kills that. As he said, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did.
I did, yeah. Good line. I wanted to throw it to Nessie because Nessie, I know you got a hard out at about the halfway mark. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to rant or praise the thing you loved the most other than the Qui-Gon, Force Ghost.
What do you mean other than? You got to give her a chance to go on and on about that.
That scene is incredibly important.
Yes, it is.
Okay, it's incredibly important because Qui-Gon was always there. Obi-Wan couldn't see him. Why couldn't Obi-Wan see him? Because he had withdrawn, he'd cut himself off. He hadn't fought his inner demons, which is, in this case, it's his guilt in the form of Anakin/Vader. He has not confronted any of that. He can't see the forest for the trees. He's got blinders on, and it's not until he's resolved that. For the first time in a long time, after the confrontation, he's at peace with himself. He is able to be mindful of the living force, and allow it to pass through him and over him and connect with it again. And there, right beside him, as he has always been, in that voice in the back of his head, and now it's it's an active voice that he can hear and connect with, is his old master. And all of those lessons are just coming back, and it's like breathing the force back in, and it's alive in him one more time. And that is so important. That's why that scene is so good, other than my man is there. But
I just want to see all those scenes now from Qui-Gon's point of view, where he's like, Obi-Wan, I'm right here.
right here.
Well, I love that he gives him that little sass when he shows up. It's like he's been trying to reach him for 10 years, and Obi-Wan's first lines are like, well, took you long enough.
Took you long enough.
But he says it in an affectionate way.
It did, though. It did take him long enough. It took him as long as it took to clear, because the attachment was there, the guilt and everything that went with that attachment that he had for Anakin. He was finally able to let it go, and release that attachment so that he could, be free of it and move on and move past it and grow in the Force.
Yeah, and that's why I absolutely love that Qui-Gon's final lines, which also happen to be the last lines of the show, is, come on, we've got a ways to go.
Yep.
Because we know that, while we've seen Obi-Wan go on this amazing journey, the journey's not complete. He still has a purpose. He still has a mission. He still has a destiny, not only to guide Luke, but also to achieve what Qui-Gon himself has achieved, becoming one, the knowledge of how to become one with the Force. He's not done, but now he's ready to begin that journey that he's already started.
Obi-Wan did not go through the Jedi trials as every other Jedi Master before him did, where a Jedi has to face their darkness and move past it and through it. And in a way, that's what this series was Obi-Wan's, his Jedi trial. He had to look at all of the darkness that was inside of him and move beyond it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so much of this was just learning to let go and to move on, and in a way, like, it's so, God, that final scene between him and Vader is so, twisted, and because in a way, I think somebody said this in the chat, in a way, Vader relinquishes a lot of Obi-Wan's guilt, whether he does that knowingly or not. It is the result of Obi-Wan, realizing, for himself at least, that his friend is dead, and that he's not the one who, bears responsibility for that his friend was taken from him, by this, dark evil. And it's just great, because then it leads into that wonderful, almost, memorial for both Anakin and Padme that Obi-Wan gets to give to Leia.
Oh God,
Which is
I got chills.
Yeah, Stephen, you said earlier you didn't cry during this show, which is fair enough. That was one of the two scenes that I did cry. I cried during the Obi-Wan and Anakin or Vader, when Vader was unmasked and Obi-Wan was trying to apologize, and Vader says that I killed Anakin Skywalker, not you. But then the other moment that I truly cried was when Obi-Wan is talking to Leia, and he gives that eulogy, that gift to Leia of a little bit more knowledge about her parents, her being wise and kind and kind-hearted and discerning like Padme, and being passionate and fearless and forthright like Anakin, like the man he knew and loved as a brother. And just and her taking that knowledge, and him saying, I wish I could tell you more, but then she looks over at her adoptive parents, she is an Organa in every way as well, and says, that's okay, you don't have to. And that really got me started, like the tears flowing. But then there was also the little grace note at the end where she said, I don't know if she was directed to do this, I don't know if it was just her instincts, but when Vivian as Leia says, will I ever see you again? She says it in exactly, and I mean exactly, the same intonation that Jake Lloyd used as Anakin when he was saying goodbye to Shmi in The Phantom Menace. And that broke me. And also, when Obi-Wan says, we can't let anybody know, it would be dangerous if they knew we were close. So when she gives him the hug, and instead of calling him Ben for the first time, she calls him Obi-Wan. That is one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars now.
Oh, and they're not going to actually get to reunite, except for maybe a glimpse from afar.
But that's okay. That's okay.
But she trusts him.
Yeah.
She trusts him now. He's earned her trust. It's not, your father sent me. No, he's earned her trust at this point.
Right.
Because she was a little iffy of him, throughout this series. Like he disappointed her several times.
Yeah. But
he came through in the end, and he's earned her trust.
Yeah. And in the end, it tying it to the sequel trilogy, the fact that she names her son Ben after this means even more.
Oh God, yeah. I thought about that earlier on, and I was like, oh, I love that has so much more meaning to it now. so on the last stream we did talk about Riva, but I want to hold off on that just a little bit longer, because before Nessie goes, I want to talk about another actress who got a really great part. Our beloved Ilaria Sand herself.
Indira Varma.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I was so pleasantly surprised, not at how great a job she did, but the fact that we saw in one of the trailers just the shot of her walking in the imperial uniform, and I thought, oh, she's gonna play like a one-off, like, imperial
No.
officer. But nope, she had an absolutely phenomenal part in this, and just God, like, so much was just great. I just, and when she's on the base, and that was such a classic, like, on the Death Star type of sequence, from A New Hope, and just seeing how she's like, hold on a moment, and, then she goes in the back of the guy and knocks him out, and she's like, just had an interruption, sorry. It was just like, that stuff was great, and just her really tender moments with both Obi-Wan and Leia were great. And I was just so sad that that she died, because I would have loved to see her continue on, but there's nothing saying we can't see like some of her backstory in some later.
Well, she made quite an impression on Leia.
She did.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so perfect. She winds up with the holster at the end.
Yeah, with her little droid, with her little Lola tucked in it.
That was really cute when she dressed up, and she's wearing boots and a holster at the end, and I'm just like,
just like Leia, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you gotta, if you're gonna walk the walk, if you're gonna talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk. You got to get out there and do it. It's really cute. I loved that character.
And then
Varma was great in this.
And her mom just accepted it.
Yeah.
Oh, we're wearing a blaster? Okay.
Yeah.
A holster? Yeah.
And that's actually in that scene, and then the scene with Obi-Wan, that is the first moment in the show when we get Princess Leia's theme. She has become they held off on all the familiar motifs until the very last episode, but I thought when they deployed them all, Princess Leia's theme, the Imperial March, the Force theme, Binary Sunset, it was at the absolute perfect moments.
I'm sure I haven't been on Twitter in a couple weeks, so I'm sure there's been some gripes about the fact that they held back on classic themes, but like, the entire store had John Williams all over it, because so much of the material was derived from the Obi-Wan theme that he composed. So, like, I don't think there's really room to complain. And looking at the soundtrack track listing, William Ross, who works a lot with John Williams, did a lot of adapting of that theme into, and I think he's got like half the tracks on the soundtrack. So, like, this was very John Williams heavy.
I want to go look for that holster now.
I'm sure it'll be a collectible item at some point.
I want to cosplay Baby Leia.
I think you could pull it off, particularly if you do it with the dynamic where she's hiding under the coat of Obi-Wan when they're sneaking out of the Fortress Inquisitorium.
Cosplay Obi-Wan with a child's face sticking out of my stomach. I got you.
So like that,
do the fun guns too.
So like, that's not inconspicuous at all.
No. I mean that was a goofy moment, but it was also like a pulpy kind of moment that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I love that.
But to bring it back to Tala Durith, Indira Varma's character for a second, she had an arc of her own as well, and I actually thought that she was really kind of the key to the thematic resonance and resilience of Obi-Wan's arc, because, you know, she also is dealing with the trauma of her past. And we'll get into this more with Rita, but specifically like the ideas of cycles with violence and guilt and how it affects children, you know? And there's that line in episode 4 when Obi-Wan is headed to Fortress Inquisitorius with her, and, you know, she's trying to get him to, you know, come back to himself a little bit. And he has the line, "Some things can't be forgotten." But then she responds in the next episode with the story about how she, you know, unwittingly led these 14 people, 6 of them children, to their death at the hands of the Inquisitors because she was just following orders as part of the Empire and didn't know. But she decided to do something about it, you know, and she, you know, she brings that line back to him and says, "You're right, Ben, some things can't be forgotten, but you can fight to make them better." Which is very much, you know, it's a refutation of the idea of just kill the past, forget about it, you know, move on, which is what people were trying to tell Obi-Wan to do earlier in the series. It's like, no, your past is part of you, and it may hurt, but you can learn from it. You can become stronger for it if you are able to take the right lessons from it, which ultimately I believe Obi-Wan does. And Tala does as well before her unfortunate passing. Although to go out, you know, with a thermal detonator, you know, I feel like she and Ned B had an ending worthy of such great character.
Pretty metal.
Yeah, and the fact that she has so much influence on Leia, and then we see that come back with Leia in Return of the Jedi, you know, holding the thermal detonator. That's a beautiful.
Learn from this, man.
Yeah.
Nessie, I know you don't have a whole lot of time left, so one last time I'm going to throw it back to you. What's the thing you want to make sure you get in before you got to go take all those crazy people to dinner?
Beru and Owen Lars are badasses, and I will fight anybody who says different.
Oh, that they were great. Beru with her shotgun blasters.
Pulling that shotgun out, we got to fight, buddy. That's my baby.
Best part though is when Owen says Ben's gone, and she says, "Whose fault is that?"
Yeah, whose fault is that? Beru is a badass, and I am a Beru stand from here on out.
No, I've seen the joke on Twitter that now we know, unfortunately, why they were treated so cruelly by the Empire when you know, when they were essentially burned to death in the beginning of New Hope. It's like, I kind of think that they probably took a few of those stormtroopers with them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they went down fighting.
Yeah.
They did not go down easy.
Yeah, the stormtroopers just took their dead with them when they left.
Yeah.
I also want to say the actress who plays Beru, I think her name is
Bonnie P.S.
Yeah, she's been through a lot in her life, which you can read about her offline. But it's great, you know, to see, you know, the fact that in Attack of the Clones, she had like one line that was just like "hello," and that was all she really got to do. And then to come back all these years later, and man, she was good. She, you know,
like a real character, a real person, you know.
Yeah, and like it's so great to have these, you know, these actors cast as the young Owen and Beru, and to have had both of them grow, and especially like Joel Edgerton has done so much over the years and has become such a phenomenal actor, and to see both of them like grow and then, you know, come back in this and really have meaty parts that they didn't get to have back in the day. It's just absolutely wonderful and added so much to those characters, even, you know, beyond what we get in the original Star Wars. And it's great.
No, they are, you know, as Bail and Breha were, you know, adoptive parents for Leia, you know, Owen and Beru were I mean, they referred to themselves as aunt and uncle as they were, but they were Luke's adoptive mother and father, and they helped shape him into the hero that he would become, you know. And I particularly love those, you know, those two moments when they're making the choice to fight for Luke, when Owen is saying, wondering if they need to flee, and Beru says, "No, we're enough, you and me." And then there's the awesome moment when Owen is staring down Reva, and she looks at him and is kind of like shocked. She's like, "You really love the boy, as if he is your own." And Owen just growls back, "He is my own." And,
I know. I'm like, oh.
And if you had told me like years ago that's like Owen and Beru Lars would face down an Imperial dark side user wielding a lightsaber, and they would give as good as they got, I wouldn't have expected that. But it, they sure as hell did. They saved, they saved him.
Yeah.
God's. You have to go yet, Nessie? Or?
Yeah, I figured when you guys we do mid-roll, I'll bounce.
Well, that's kind of like we're there and we hit a lull in the conversation.
All right. Well, I'm going to peace out, and you guys have a great conversation, and I'll see everybody in a couple of weeks.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I have never seen this person in our chat before, but I love this person from Twitter, Just Reds. I don't know if you follow them on Twitter, but
All right, cool.
I love this guy.
Just for the memes, guys.
Hi.
Just for the memes.
All right, take care, Nessie. It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
Bye.
I'll
See
see
you
you
tomorrow,
tomorrow.
guys, for Olive Garden.
Yes. We're not canceling this. It's still happening. All right. Okay. Bye.
Oh, yeah. Nessie's on vacation right now. For those of you that weren't here at the beginning, she's on vacation. Laura, Kate, and Dan are all there. Voice of Geekdom Dan are all there in Virginia. John's going to be there with them tomorrow. Kelly's probably around there somewhere.
Yeah. No, I'll actually be staying with Kelly while the rest of them are at the Airbnb. We're going to be geeking out over all of Kelly's comics.
So yeah, I couldn't make it to this one, unfortunately, but hey, it is what it is. I hope you guys have a blast this week.
Yeah, and I've already been on vacation for a couple of days because I've been chilling by the pool in my cousin's backyard. So yeah, I've been having quite the time. It's been nice after I've had a lot of stress going on lately, and so it was really nice just to chill in the pool and get on one of those. They had one of those like foam tube things where you just like stick your arms over and just sort of float in the pool. It's nice.
Sounds nice. Yeah. So that being said, John, you're probably not here next week.
Actually, I should still be able to. It's the week after that I won't be able to.
But I don't need you.
Oh, okay. Well, good then.
Because next week we're doing the end of Stranger Things.
Okay.
We are. Yeah, and I've got Cecilia from Geeksterelia is going to be here. Hopefully Yogi will be able to make it this time. He was supposed to try to make it last time, but couldn't. And maybe a couple of the other guests from the first time will make it. I know you're not caught up on the show anyway, John. So, yeah. I was like, what a great spot to put that conversation.
Well, then you all will be without me for 2 weeks then, because I won't be able to join the week after either. So
it's all right. I've got stuff lined up. Like we might do Umbrella Academy season 3 or something like that.
Yeah, although I have fit in 2 episodes of that so far.
It's wild.
So I am watching
it's wild, y'all. Which
great.
is what I'll be talking about on Cecilia's channel on Friday. Is the Umbrella Academy season 3? Have you watched that?
Have I seen the Umbrella Academy?
Yeah.
No, I've heard it's quite good, and I know it's been in the news recently because of the story about Elliot Page's character. So I'm intrigued to check it out at some point.
It's bonkers. It's bonkers.
I'm just gonna say real quick, it's still one of my favorite characters from all fiction now is absolutely 5. I just love him to death because he's so. Just to see that actor, portraying that character, he's just.
It's funny. It's funny.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a 15-year-old actor, but it's like a 60-year-old man trapped in his body, a 60-year-old hitman, super-powered hitman who looks like and this whole show, you're like, what the hell is happening? Which is part of the charm of it. Klaus is my favorite. Anyway, we'll probably be talking about Umbrella Academy soon-ish. Got some Stranger Things coming up next week. Ms. Marvel has been really excellent, and I have loved that show, loved it. So I'm going to be talking about that once the show is done.
No, you could do that.
It's not over yet, though. It won't be over.
You can talk about some of the episodes. Don't do Umbrella Academy without me. After I've just been gushing about the episodes I saw.
All right. Well, we'll find something.
Okay.
But at any rate, so I will be on Geeksterelia this Friday. I think it's 9 Eastern. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, Geeksterelia this coming Friday to talk about the Umbrella Academy, which was great. We have a Slack group that I want you to join. If you are not in our Slack group, you are missing getting to interact with all these lovely people. People like Aaron M. and Mathieu and Potter. And that's just the people that are at the bottom of the list here. Blue Lemons, I see him there all the time. John is in there. Jared occasionally pokes his head in. Nessie and all the people hanging out with her. This is our friend group. Come join our friend group. We want you to join that. And if you are interested, send me an email here, we3dragons@gmail.com. I'll send you an invite. Don't be an asshole. And that's it. Oh, yeah. And this guy right here, Danny and I are every day post our Wordle scores in our Wordle channel. I think his streak is a little bit longer than mine right now.
Yeah, but most importantly, join so you can be part of the Knights of Kira, which Jared and I are representing.
Yeah, no, I feel like we are few, but we are mighty.
Yeah.
We are few but mighty, indeed.
Which, by the way, the Instagram account just passed 11,000 followers.
Nice, so. Very nice. Yeah.
But I also got to shout out our patrons. Our Patreon High Council is led by ridiculous Ed Tollett, the Alpha Patron. Sean, we love you. I know you can't talk right now. He's moving and stuff. He's at work, and I think moving right after work. Love you, buddy. Thanks for being there for us. First patron we ever had. It also is Lord John Bronstein the Wise, also sits on the Patreon High Council, and they are supported by the nobility of the realm, including the Cloaked One of the Underworld. That's Australia. Ryan Stavka, the Russian Quartermaster, Reflective Rambling, Arch-Maester Emma, Kate, Mistress of the House of Books, Jared Kozal, Doctor of Dragons, that guy right there.
Indeed.
Lady Maura Lee of Starfall. And joining just this week, we got a new member of the council, and that is Lady Rita, the Unbound. So thank you, patrons. We love you guys. Thanks for keeping the lights on over here. Yeah, and if you want to become a patron, link in the description. You want to follow me on Twitter?
Oh, no. We need more. We need more patrons. The lights just went off. Oh, wait. Here they are.
Jared, I'm not paying for your godmother's electric bill with Patreon money. Sorry. But Jared, your Twitter is down there in the description as well. I know you're a very busy man.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to consume media as often as you would probably like to, but I also know that you are a Star Wars first kind of nerd. Am I right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's definitely the fandom I've been a part of the longest and have the strongest, most entrenched feelings about. But I enjoy all things geeky. I just wish I had a little bit more opportunity to consume it. But starting later this fall, we're going to have kind of like my pop culture nirvana, because at the same time in the late August or early September, we're going to be having the Cassian Andor show, and then we're going to be having House of the Dragon, and we're going to be having the Rings of Power. So for all three of those shows to be on at the same time, I will be making time to watch them all.
Good luck, my friend.
Which, it's actually really interesting, the fact that the next Star Wars thing we're getting is the Cassian Andor show, because I feel like in a lot of respects that's a really great show to continue this one, because it's going to take place a few years.
Yeah, it'll be. I think the first season is going to be 5 years before A New Hope.
Yeah, so it's just a few years after this one, and we've seen, the underground resistance, in this show, and so it'll be interesting to see if they established. God, I'm trying to remember the character's name. He was basically the leader of the underground group.
Saw Gerrera?
No, in this show.
In this show.
Roken. Colin Roken.
Roken. So I would be interested to see if we see him in some future shows. It might not. What are you making me dizzy now, Stephen? And I have a feeling that unless they were working very closely together on the writing, we probably won't see him in Andor. But I would like to see his story continue on, because I think they kind of teased that with him, saying I'm just getting started. So I'd like to see him continue on.
Right on. I guess we're officially back talking about the show now.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else I need to make sure I squeeze into the mid-roll. We got stuff coming up here, nerdy stuff. And yeah. Join our Slack group.
Yeah, and I'm on vacation, so I won't be doing anything in the near future. So I don't have anything to announce. So
all right, so let's get back to the show.
All right.
Do you want to start talking about Reva now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So what we guessed did come to pass. She was in fact, one of the younglings, and
well, and I don't even think I said this during the stream, but I had the thought that her end game was hunting Vader, even that early on in the story. So I saw that coming. Doesn't happen very often, but it happened this time, and I just want to claim my point while I can,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and it's a great idea for a character, the idea of because we have seen scattered survivors of Order 66, even younglings, but to my knowledge, this is the first time that we've seen a character who not only was in the Jedi Temple, but came face to face with Anakin as a young Darth Vader, was grievously wounded by him to the point of near death, but then she ends up joining the Inquisitorius and falling to the dark side due to her desire to get revenge. And one of the reasons I ended up thinking that she ended up being such an incredibly compelling character, brilliantly portrayed by Moses Ingram, by the way, was because it really did show how clever and how determined and how, intense her desire for revenge was, and how all of that got her right back where she started, looking up at Darth Vader as he puts a lightsaber through her stomach. Because the ultimate idea of the dark side is that the quest for revenge, it's hollow. It gains you nothing, and you just perpetuate these cycles of violence, which is what we see when we learn her motivation is to avenge her family, essentially the only family she ever knew, these younglings. But then in doing so, she starts to take on more and more qualities of Vader himself. As Obi-Wan says, are you going to let him do it again? Well, Reva ends up leading an assault on a group of helpless, or maybe not so helpless, but innocent children, because she is trying to avenge what was done to her in the past. And then when she can't match Vader at all, because we see her power is nowhere close to his, he just kind of wipes the floor with her. And so she decides to take out her revenge on his son. And she comes very close to the point she almost kills Luke Skywalker. But what ultimately saves Luke and saves her is that sense of empathy that I can't do what was done to me. I cannot do what Vader did to me, and I recognize. And as she asked Obi-Wan in that tearful scene when she returned Luke to his family, she's like, "Have I become him?" And he says, "No, you have chosen not to," which is such a powerful idea, because to break the cycle of violence like that is not easy. Not easy. It particularly when you've been traumatized, as Reva clearly has. And the fact that she was able to do it, and that she will go on to an uncertain future, but I like to think that she will be trying to help those who, like her, could have been taken in by the dark side or taken in by the Empire. It is a great place to leave the character, because especially for a show that it started with the idea that Obi-Wan feels that he failed this young boy. He failed Anakin, the boy who was entrusted to him to care for as an apprentice, as a father, essentially. So he thinks of him as his brother. And this show, ultimately, one of the strongest and most emotionally resonant themes I found was the idea of what it means to fail to protect a child, and what it can do, how damaging that cycle can be, and how the trauma of that failure can destroy not only the child's life but the protector's life as well. And to break that cycle or to find peace with that cycle, as Obi-Wan says, by showing mercy, you have given them peace, not only for the people whose lives were lost, but also herself, because she could have just gone on like this forever, and who knew how many people she would have hurt. But she found a way to break the cycle, and I just thought that was an extraordinary moment for a character that I know that some people weren't sure about in the beginning, but I think she ultimately more than earned her place in this show, and as both a reflection of Obi-Wan and as her own character. And ultimately, I think you guys mentioned on your original stream, she really did end up becoming a secondary protagonist of this story.
Yeah. I just keep thinking about all those, especially in episode 5, the haunting shots of the way they kept cutting back and forth between, Anakin, facing down the younglings and stabbing them, and then cutting back to the present. And then in episode 6, we get where Reva sees herself in place of Luke, and just really haunting moments. And it was beautifully done, but haunting, and yeah, it's just great because we get that salvation of this character who very nearly went the way of Anakin, but was able to pull herself back.
And I think that, you know, she is a character, whether or not we see her again in a show like this or in other, you know, Star Wars media. This is a character whose story is not finished. So I look forward to seeing where they go with her next.
Are you kidding me?
Oh my God, they're back.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's not the same. It's obviously a multiples of the same bot, but it's not the exact same. So blocking one only blocks one freaking version of it. I'm ready to tear my hair out. This is very frustrating. Like, we've never had a problem with bots before. Never.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just
Must be a slow day.
Yeah. Block it when we can. But kind of maybe to kind of tie in with Riva, the whole, because we had mentioned Roken earlier, the whole idea of the path, this essentially this network of ordinary citizens who have made the choice to find, shelter, protect, and guide, you know, surviving Jedi, and particularly Force-sensitive children. And the idea, like, that's another incredibly rich story idea. And all the characters that we saw involved with the path, you know, Haja, Kumail Nanjiani's character, Tala, Indira Varma's character, Roken, O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character, all of them, you know, they came to the path in different ways, and they all kind of represent different aspects of, you know, why they got involved. You know, Roken lost his wife, it sounds like, to the Inquisitors. Tala was directly responsible for the deaths of several families on Gorel. Haja, we don't know quite as much about his origins, but, you know, he's emulating a Jedi comedically in the beginning, but ultimately we see that he really does, you know, have that good heart of a Jedi as well, even though he doesn't have.
So happy to see Kumail Nanjiani in Star Wars. I was just like, yes. I love him. I think he's hilarious and charming. So, and that character was so much fun. The fake Jedi was just a really nice. I did enjoy that. It was a nice touch. He's got such a great delivery on the lines he was given. Yeah, give me more Kumail Nanjiani in anything.
Yeah, I think they specifically wrote that character for him, and it shows.
Yeah, I just loved the journey that character went on, so that, you know, you wouldn't have thought, you know, in the beginning that, you know, that the character could actually be dependent upon, you know, to be part of this actual underground movement, and then for Obi-Wan to eventually trust Leia's safe return to him. So to see that journey throughout the episodes was a lot of fun. And yeah, it's, you know, and it shows that Obi-Wan goes from saying, "Oh, I knew I should have trusted him," to, you know, opening his heart back up to seeing the good in people, even the less reputable ones. I will say that, like, I was so happy to get, you know, some new, you know, well-developed characters. Little disappointed still that we didn't get the return of Hondo Ohnaka. You know, I think that would have fit really, really good with Obi-Wan, but I do appreciate that the emphasis was on new characters instead of, you know, I know some people have complained about, you know, other Star Wars shows really racking up the cameo count. I always enjoy it, but I do like this one took the time to bring us some new characters. But speaking of cameos that weren't actually cameos, but allusions to characters, going back to episode 3, I just adored the mention that we got of Quinlan Voss. Just so great, because that is a pure Clone Wars moment, which really connected the larger, story for me, and just the fact that the way Obi-Wan says Quinlan was here, and the fact that they did not get along, but he's so happy to see evidence that part of his family has survived.
No, I felt like the legacy of the Clone Wars was very present in this show, even if it was not as overt as some may have wanted it to be. I know a lot of people were hoping for Ahsoka. We did not see her. I know a lot of people were hoping for a reference to Satine. Unfortunately, we didn't really get that either. Clone Wars era flashbacks with Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor. We did get the flashback, which we haven't really touched on, and I'm sure we will. But it was pre-Attack of the Clones, and then it was during Revenge of the Sith, so it wasn't like the part of the Clone Wars era flashbacks that I think some fans wanted. But I still feel like the legacy of the Clone Wars was present in everything I mentioned about Obi-Wan's legacy, Anakin's legacy before his fall. And then there were little references like Quinlan Voss being mentioned throughout the show, like Florum being name dropped, all that stuff that lets you know that this is still part of the history and the story, even though it's not as direct as some may have wanted it to be. This is a show where you could really watch it having just watched the movies and not get overwhelmed with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I don't think they wanted to overwhelm the story with that kind of stuff. I think they wanted very much to zero in and have this be, a character study basically, and dive really into the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and yeah, I agree with that. Just as much as I would have loved for a reunion between Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, I don't know that it would have necessarily fit in with what this show was trying.
Well, it would have muddied the waters because of the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka, and she has the close of her story through Rebels.
Yeah.
And this wasn't that. She didn't need to be there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But we did, and we talked about this on the last stream, we did get a great moment where we got to see a clone. And that was great, and to see Obi-Wan's response to that. So I feel like in more subtle ways there were connections to Clone Wars that without really hitting us over the head with big name cameos and stuff. Although we did get some cameos. We got Sheev in the last episode.
and I actually think that scene is actually, in addition to just being a fun return for the Emperor, it actually is very thematically important, because what we see in that scene is that Vader, who has just been bested by Obi-Wan again, is raging and determined that I will hunt him down. We will destroy anyone in our path until he is found. And she just kind of looks at him with a side eye, like, "You seem agitated, my friend." and what he's really and he's like, "I wonder if your thoughts on this matter are clear." And it's because clearly, the idea of love and hate aren't necessarily always polar opposites. Sometimes they're just separated by a thin line. And she knows that if Anakin or Vader, or clearly because he is still Anakin, is going to spend his focus and his time raging after Obi-Wan because of his past connection, he's not really serving Sheev's interests. So Sheev kind of drops that little threat in there of oh, if your past cannot be overcome, and then Vader, who has spent the entire show being like, Kenobi is all that matters, all of a sudden leans back and is like, Kenobi means nothing. I serve only you, my master. And we see Sheev give that little smile because that's what he wants. He wants Vader under his thumb.
I'm sorry. It's pronounced Steve.
Steve Palpatine, yep.
Yeah.
Steve Palpatine, former senator of Naboo turned galactic despot. But
yeah.
I think it's very telling that after that conversation, when Vader finally says, Kenobi means nothing, I serve only you, that's when we get the Imperial March. Because that is kind of, to the extent that Vader has an arc in this series, he really is kind of more what represents kind of a stasis and an inability to grow and change. But he does eventually kind of put his desire to chase Kenobi aside because he is trapped in this cycle of the dark side. And that's when I think, because in this show, he is brutal. He is, raging. He makes some kind of rash decisions at times, and that's not quite as much of the Vader we see in the original trilogy, who is a little bit more colder and calculating. And I kind of feel like this was part of his journey towards getting towards that character that we see in The New Hope and the original trilogy.
Yeah. And, God, just seeing how manipulative Palpatine always is, it's just a joy. And I always love seeing Ian Mcdiarmid come back to play this role. We're not going to open this, Jared, but even with the issues that I have with Rise of Skywalker, Ian Mcdiarmid, he's always a pleasure to watch on screen because he loves to chew that scenery in the most wonderful way.
Oh, I as long as he wants to keep playing this character, I am happy to see him back because he is the devil at the center of this story. He is the ultimate evil, and I really did feel like it was appropriate that he, his presence be felt in this show, even if he hadn't actually fully appeared, and I'm very glad that he did.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I was going to say, talking about like Vader's single-minded determination, I love that side eye that the Grand Inquisitor gives Vader on the bridge. It's like, Jesus, this guy.
I have to take a moment to sing the praises of Rupert Friend as the Grand Inquisitor because he killed this role. He knew he was playing like a pulp serial adventure villain, and he just leaned all the way into it. He had some of my favorite line readings throughout all of his appearances, like when he's talking to Rita, it's like, "You came to us from the gutter," or when he's my personal favorite, which might be one of my favorite line deliveries in all of Star Wars, is when Reva's been stabbed and he reappears as like, "Surprise, I lived," and then he's like, "Revenge does wonders for the will to live, don't you think?" And I'm just like, that is so pulpy, and it's so good.
He's doing a different thing than what Jason Isaacs did with the character in Rebels, but they're both close enough to where you can see it being the same character, but he's definitely doing, like you said, that sort of pulpy, old school kind of villain, and I did really start to appreciate it because he's almost like he's got this atmosphere of like being threatening, but he's also really funny just in a lot of the ways that he delivers a line. He's an entertaining character, and it'd be nice to see him return to the role if they bring the Grand Inquisitor back in live action for something else, which I have to imagine they will now that they've established him. So, yeah. But I was originally upset that Jason Isaacs wasn't like doing the voice for the Grand Inquisitor, but I grew to kind of accept Rupert Friend for this, and I just still find it utterly hilarious that oh God, what's his name in Pride and Prejudice? Why am I buying?
Wickham. Mr.
Wickham. Mr. Wickham. I just love the fact that now the fact that Mr. Wickham is the Grand Inquisitor. I just think.
Look, I am neither
hilarious.
prideful nor prejudiced, so I've not seen that. Okay. You guys are like, I'm happy to be here. Great conversation. Love the takes you guys have, but like for me, I just don't feel that strongly about any of it. You know, it was good. It just didn't move me to a galaxy far, far away. Almost none of it did.
Well, now you know how I feel watching Marvel stuff, Steve.
I do, and like that's legit. You know, we rib each other and joke about it, but like people connect with different things for different reasons. You know, this one, it just didn't quite reach the summit for me. I enjoyed the ride. I enjoyed it.
Well, it's funny because I actually, and I'm not trying to dig at you, Stephen. Like it's you didn't do it for you, and that's fine. But I actually found this is probably my favorite of the live action Star Wars thing so far, because I was the most emotionally connected to this. Because even though I've had my problems with the prequel films themselves, like the world established in those films and the characters and the world building is some of my favorite in all of Star Wars. And it's the reason why Clone Wars was so formative for me, because it basically, I always felt like Clone Wars took advantage of the phenomenal world building that George did for those films and took it to the next level. And so to now see a story done with this level of care in live action that leaps off from the end of the prequels, and like you said, Jared, it really is like episode 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was just, I was so emotionally connected to this from the get-go. And so like, but I get it, Stephen, because, you know, and granted, I understand it, because growing up, I did grow up on the original trilogy. So like, I get that connection to Star Wars, you know, inherently being the story of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Princess Leia. But I feel like I hit a really good in-between point where I knew those movies from when I was really little, and then my Star Wars resurgence hit with the special editions, but then especially when the prequels came out. So I feel like my heart was really open to those films. And for me, that's always been like the most, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like there's the most material to mine is from that era of Star Wars. I feel like there's so many amazing character arcs and so many conflicts that are just so wonderful. And so I love to see these stories in that setting with those characters. And I wanted this from an Obi-Wan Anakin, like the meatiness that this had with the dynamic of those characters. And so when we got to, you know, even in episode 3, when they come together and, you know, what have you become? I am what you made me. It was like reaching deep into my soul, and like I was feeling that. But when we got to that last episode and half of Vader's mask is off, and it's, you know, going back and forth between, you know, Hayden's voice and James Earl Jones, and until finally it's just all a mess, and you get you know, Anakin yelling, Obi-Wan. It's like, for me, like I was so emotional during that scene. It really hit very hard. And so, yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to what stuff you're more connected to in Star Wars. And I feel like there's so many different, there's a Star Wars for everybody now. because there's people, the younger people who, years from now will say they are most closely connected with the sequel trilogy, and that's going to be it for them. And so, yeah, so it's fine. But I just, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna lie. I was totally like emotionally sucker punched by this series.
Well, Erin has a great question. Is there anything I would like to have seen done different? Because she'd like to hear about whether I think there's a reason I didn't connect with it. So, like, my short answer is I wouldn't change anything. This is not my... I don't want to be that presumptuous. You know what I mean? Obviously, everything I change makes each of you less happy with the story you got. You loved the story you got. If I go changing it, you might love it less. I would hate to do that to somebody, to a story that somebody truly loves. The short answer is I wouldn't change anything. The long answer is much longer than that. What I would have wanted was to see an Obi-Wan that was still in the desert, maybe thinks Anakin is dead. Like, you can set it up all the same way, but it's... How about an Obi-Wan who is maybe settled into the drudgery of waiting until Luke becomes a young adult so he can start his Jedi training? And he's just living his workaday life. And everything can unfold exactly the same. And his dark night of the soul can come when he learns that Anakin is alive. He doesn't have to be that guy that's like given up on life for 10 years because this was the perfect Jedi. And to see the perfect Jedi in the place that we see Obi-Wan at the beginning of this story hurts my sensibilities about what I think a Jedi is. You know what I mean? Like, I said it at the beginning, like, that's not my Obi-Wan. I don't recognize that guy. The Obi-Wan I know would not have consigned himself to the land of wind and ghosts, so to speak, where he is hopeless.
Well, I still maintain that that's completely earned.
I'm not saying it's not. I didn't want that, though. And again, the question is about what would Steven want to see different. I think that might be one of the small things. Because, like I said, I liked it. I just wasn't swept away. And Star Wars, some of it does that for me, some of it doesn't, God, I've got something in my eye and have had for the last hour, and I can't figure it out. But again, it's hard for me to say what I would want to change because I don't have a better idea either. I just kept like, it was fine. What's next? When's Miss Marvel coming on?
Yeah. No. So, I mean, I kind of think that it's, like John mentioned, there's something for everyone in Star Wars. And they're, like, with a galaxy this vast, not everyone is going to connect with every story the same. So, what is incredibly deeply moving for someone may not be as moving for others, and that is totally okay. I think the reason that I found this story so emotionally compelling and why, like John, this is my favorite of the live action Disney shows so far by a wide margin, I will say, is because it is so closely tied to the Skywalker saga, which is, for me, that is the heart of Star Wars. The 9 theatrical films that of the main numbered saga. And honestly, one of the things that I wrestled with going back and forth, as I realized just how much I was loving this show, is would I have wanted to see this story as a movie? Because on the one hand, it would have meant that we had a little bit more of a budget with effects. It might be a little bit more of an epic experience, as it were. But I also what I really loved was the story, and that we had to get, we got to spend a little bit extra time with all these characters. I don't know if it was a 2.5 hour movie, would we have gotten as much with Paula? Would we have gotten as much with Haja? Would we have gotten as much with, Riva and all those, those characters? And so ultimately, I am very happy that it did become a TV show, but I still find it to be more connected and essential as part of what I connect to most about Star Wars than like The Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett, which I do love, but I sometimes do feel like that is like the galactic underworld side of Star Wars that I've never quite as often connected to, as opposed to the light and the dark side, the epic hero Jedi versus Sith, like the more kind of mythic storytelling that I think the Skywalker saga traffics in. So that's why this story in particular, the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was very, very important to me in my fandom, that's why I found this story to be the most compelling of the live action shows, and in particular the last couple episodes. I said that at the time Chapter 5 was airing that I thought it was probably the best episode of live action Star Wars television. There were a couple of episodes from Clone Wars and Rebels that I thought matched it on the animated side. But the finale is probably my favorite episode of Star Wars television, period, irrespective of the medium. And it's because I felt like it delivered a sense of catharsis that I needed for the character of Obi-Wan, and that I think that will ultimately helps bring the saga closer together, which is what I always love, And at the end of that, end of the show, like I know there are rumors of a second season, but I felt the same way that I felt at the end of Return of the Jedi, and at the end of Revenge of the Sith, and at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, where I was like, I found that so satisfying that I don't need more. I will be happy to see more, but I felt that a complete story was told, and the sense of gratitude and joy that I get from that, really I can't put it into words, but I felt it with this show.
Yeah, I'm extremely conflicted on that whole thing, on the question of a second season, because I do feel like it was perfect the way it ended. I wouldn't mind seeing like certain characters like continue and offshoot from this in different things, but I don't know that I want another season of Obi-Wan Kenobi, because I feel like where it ends
like Princess Leia.
Perfect. Yeah.
And Trish brings up this great question. This is another reason why I personally think this show may have been more satisfying for me personally, was as a prequel kid, I loved Hayden Christensen's performance, and it really kind of broke my heart to see the way he was treated by the Star Wars fandom back in the day. Also Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best and all the others and Moses Ingram now, who have suffered, and John Boyega and everyone else who has suffered abuse from fans who are unfortunately don't have the right perspective, I feel. But what was so gratifying was, even if the show itself had not lived up to expectations, seeing the way that people embraced these actors, and after 20 years, like watching the Star Wars Celebration panel and seeing just the absolute love that fans were showering on Hayden Christensen and these other actors, that gave me just such joy and such a sense of gratitude and vindication that the people who love these stories back when they were being vilified, frankly, their voices are now being heard. And I do think that people have a better appreciation for Hayden Christensen now, because he got to do some great material in this show, but also just because, he came back. He was willing to come back to this story and this character and give us, another perspective. He would have been well within his rights to walk away and wash his hands of it all. But
yeah, he would have.
but he came back and he apparently had a great time doing it, and he gave a great performance, and he is rightly reaping all the love for it. And I can only hope that any actor who has had such an experience with Star Wars has a similar opportunity.
Yeah, what I will say about this is I'll be fully honest in this. I'm not going to retroactively say, oh, yes, I loved Hayden all along. I was not particularly a fan of his in the prequels. That said, it was completely abhorrent the way he was treated, and like Star Wars fans have a really bad history with this, with people continuing all the way through into the sequel trilogy as we've seen, and even to this show, with the horrible racism that we've seen on display for Moses Ingram. Like it's bad. There's a lot of toxicity, and Hayden got a lot of hate, and a lot of that boiled down to the fact that, as I said before, love them as much as I do, the prequels were not renowned for sort of dialogue and acting, but I was overjoyed to see him in this, because I figured he'd get a bit more of a fair shake with this, and I thought that he gave an incredible performance. And I especially liked the fact that Hayden said he went back to watch Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And I did feel like in that flashback scene, even though it took place before the events of Clone Wars, I felt like I was watching an Anakin that was going to turn into the hero that we see throughout the Clone Wars. And so I like that he did that research for the character. And then there's not enough superlatives that I can use for that final scene between him and Obi-Wan. Just it was mesmerizing. I think it's one of the most well acted scenes in all of Star Wars, and that's for both of those actors. He absolutely, and like I said, I say this as someone who, despite feeling he was unfairly treated, was not a big fan. I always said that my preferred actor for Anakin was Matt Lanter from Clone Wars. But I'm going to just say that, again, Hayden Christensen blew me away in this show. I thought he was phenomenal. It was a shame he didn't get even more material as Anakin. Would have loved to see that. So he was fantastic. I hope that he gets to do even more. There's been rumors about him popping up in the Ahsoka show. I hope those are true. I want to see more from him moving forward.
Okay, I'm going to butt in here. We got about 10 minutes left. I've got a couple of things I got to say, and then I'll turn it back over to the two people who really loved it. But it's on the topic of Hayden Christensen. John, you actually touched on it, because Trish's original question was about what do we think made people change the way they were interacting with, the way the fandom was interacting with Hayden. And you mentioned the Clone Wars, and I think that's actually a big part of it. While it wasn't Hayden voice acting the character in that show, it was based on his likeness, and it recontextualized the films that he was in a way that really resonated with a whole lot of Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
So I think Hayden Christensen has benefited from the Clone Wars being a great show that people love. And it sort of changed the way they view his performance in the live action movies. And the fact that it's not the other way around, it's not like it was an animated show first and then they found this actor. So this sort of backwards compatibility thing has really benefited Hayden, I think. Another thing is, because I've watched some interviews, Hayden Christensen is not a young man. he's not old by any means, but he is not a young man. And when I saw him in the prequel trilogy, I looked at him and I did not see Darth Vader. But if you look at Hayden Christensen today, I'm like, yeah, that guy could turn into an evil murder robot person. Like, there's something about the way he's aged and the way he's carrying himself now as an adult. Like, I'm sure it was very difficult for him for a long, long time, and unjustly so, to deal with the backlash from toxic Star Wars fans. But he seems like a much more, like, he's married and kids, and he's an adult with accomplishments outside of his Star Wars stuff. But it's really great to see him as a more confident version of the person that he was those years ago, combined with the fandom being more accepting because of the rehabilitation of that character through the Clone Wars. I did enjoy him on the show. We didn't get a whole lot of him, but what he did, I think Hayden did a fantastic job with the little bit that he was given to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, that's it until we get to the end. You guys go ahead.
Yeah, I think, and let's see, I think, AK mentioned something about age reduction CGI. I was actually glad that they didn't do that for him, because I think they could get away with it because so many people have been waiting for his return, and so in a way it was just nice to see him, the actor, as he is playing the part. And to be fair, like I mentioned this back when season 2 of The Mandalorian came out and we talked about it, where I found like CGI loot to be a distraction. I felt much better about it in Book of Boba Fett, but when we were talking about The Mandalorian, it kind of pulled me out of it a little bit. I was actually really glad that when Anakin popped up, I was like, I'm looking at, a human being. He doesn't look like his face has been smoothed out or anything. So I actually liked that because it allowed for a very natural scene, between the two actors, and plus in a way it also gives us a glimpse at, in a real world setting, like what an older Anakin would have looked like if he hadn't succumbed to the dark side. But I don't know where else I was going with that, but as for why I think a lot of the stuff that you said, Stephen, is true about the rehabilitation of the character, but also I honestly think that there were a lot of younger people who saw those movies who didn't need the character rehabilitated. I think that those movies hit at just the right age. Unfortunately, I was the right age when Phantom Menace came out, I think. And then I got sidetracked by Lord of the Rings for a couple of years. But I think, people who were maybe just a couple of years younger than me, like, they saw those movies and they weren't looking at them with such a cynical eye. And I think there's a lot of people who are fans of those movies who completely enjoyed Hayden Christensen as Anakin, the first time around. And the thing is, those audience members are grown up now, and we're in the age of social media. They're able to have their voices heard, and they're able to say, hey, we really liked all this stuff, and we're gonna, speak our mind about that. And so whereas back in the day, it was all the more jaded, old school Star Wars fans who, were voicing their gripes. Now it's the younger generation who grew up who gets to say, no, you don't speak for all of us. We love this. And so they're showering these actors with praise that, you know, doesn't come from a place of something needing to be rehabilitated. It just comes from a place of pure, authentic love. So
both are probably happening at the same time.
Yeah. And also just the recontextualization of the story, because I think Trish made a point earlier in the chat about how some people may have just not responded to Hayden because he was playing such an unabashedly emotional character, you know, and like how the nature of his fall, well, being, you know, unable to control his fear, his love for Padme eventually being corrupted into this jealous kind of possessive sort of love. You know, Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker is a tragic character, and the prequel, like George Lucas, you know, really hammered that home in all of his, you know, interviews about the prequels. It's like, I think people didn't really get who Darth Vader was. He was never, I mean, he is cool, he is a badass, but that was not the point of his character. The point of the character was that he was a tragedy. He was a cautionary tale. Mm-hmm. And kind of like what we were talking about earlier, how it's a little uncomfortable for people to see their heroes fail and see them, their heroes unsure, like Luke and like Obi-Wan. It can be hard if you've had this image of this iconic, you know, monstrous, more machine than man, like unstoppable villain, the greatest villain in pop culture history by many estimations, seeing him as an emotionally insecure younger man whose flaws ultimately drive him to commit terrible deeds and destroy the good person that he was. That's difficult for some people to reconcile. So I think that at the time that was kind of a shock to the system, and maybe some of George's dialogue didn't necessarily help on that front. But I think that as people kind of looked over the total picture of the story of Darth Vader, they've come to see it as more of an essential part of it, Hayden's part of it, because they are, despite what Vader says in the final episode, Darth Vader did not kill Anakin Skywalker. They are one in the same. There's a great passage in the Revenge of the Sith novelization that I have somewhere around here, where I think it's Vader is like in the suit and he is talking about it's how he's realizing that he is the one who caused all this. He's the one who caused his actions. And if I can just read it, it says, "And there is one blazing moment in which you finally understand that there was no dragon, there was no Vader, that there was only you, only Anakin Skywalker, that it was all you, is you, only you." And I think that that's part of what the issue is for Anakin and Vader, is that he is a man who is capable of great good, as we see, and capable of terrible evil. And we saw the best and the worst of him. The best may have been seen in Clone Wars when it wasn't Hayden portraying him, but the whole...
That doesn't make any sense, Jared. People are only good or only bad. Well,
yeah. Especially in Star Wars, you know, no one ever switches their path, you know, and reconciles and either falls or is redeemed. Yeah, no, it doesn't really seem to be a DNA of this story.
Yeah,
I'm getting a little punchy. I need to go pee really bad too.
Okay, I'll just say also on the to cap off the discussion on Hayden, he also got the short end of the stick with what periods of Anakin's life to play. He got to play the whiny Padawan in episode 2, and then he got to play Anakin descending to the dark side in episode 3. Not exactly the most endearing moments of Anakin's life, and that goes back to what you were saying, Stephen, about his portrayal in the Clone Wars and getting to see Anakin play the hero, and you know, and get, you know, the audience on his side, you know, with, you know, sympathizing with him and cheering for him. So, but since we need to make sure that Stephen gets to run to the bathroom, as do I, as a matter of fact, I'll just finish off by saying, like, this was honestly a lot of things that I hoped for. As I said at the beginning of the stream, a couple bumps along the way. Very few things are perfect, but overall, it gave me what I wanted, and so many emotional moments that just really got me here, and I'm glad we got this show, and it was beautiful.
Yep, and I'll just say that this show was a gift. I was never sure if we would get a story like this. I am so glad that we did. I am so glad that it brought together, the characters we love from the prequels, that it managed to provide additional connective tissue to the original trilogy, kind of weaving that ever-evolving tapestry of Star Wars storytelling together in ways that I had never fully anticipated, but now we'll always be able to go back and revisit and find additional depth and additional meaning in. So I am very glad that this show, arrived for us when it did, and that we are going to be able to re-examine it and question it and love it and share it for years and maybe even generations to come. Because, like the best of Star Wars storytelling, which I believe this show stands among, it feels timeless to me.
And I want more Qui-Gon regardless.
Yeah, that'd be great. It was good, and I had fun watching it. There's my final thoughts.
Very good.
Okay, cool.
Shall we move to the end?
I think so.
Yep.
Okay, great. Jared, thank you for joining us. Again, we all know you love your Star Wars, and thank you for coming on and sharing your insights. We don't often agree on Star Wars stuff. We both love it, but there's sometimes we don't agree. But you always have such a well articulated point of view. It's a joy to have you join us. So thank you for that. John, great to see you as always. You get to go back to vacation life. I get to go back to work tomorrow. Jared, I'm assuming you get to go back to work tomorrow too.
I do.
Yeah. Yay. So John, enjoy your vacation. For those of you who are watching, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week for some Stranger Things season 4 wrap up. The last few episodes are dropping this week, and we'll be talking about it Sunday. No John, no Nessie, but with me, and I've got several different people sort of floating around. Cecilia will be here for that one. Hopefully we'll get Yogi from Through the Moon Door on. And yeah.
And also, everybody, go watch The Umbrella Academy. It's really good.
It is good. The Umbrella Academy is good. It is wild and crazy. But so I guess that's it for now. We'll see you all next week. And until then, you know what it is. Peace and be excellent to each other.